When the British Expeditionary Force evacuated from Dunkirk in 1940, thousands of Bren guns were left smoldering on French beaches. Newspapers called it a disaster of arms. Many in Parliament thought the Bren, heavy, slow-firing, and chambered for the small .303 round, was already obsolete before the first year of war had ended. Yet by 1945 the same gun would earn a reputation as the most reliable light machine gun in Europe, the weapon soldiers trusted when everything else jammed. The irony was that Britain never intended the Bren to be revolutionary. It was born from thrift, not ambition, a licensed copy of the Czechoslovak ZBVZ 26 and 30 series, chosen because it could be built quickly on existing tooling. Factories in Enfield and Inglis remachined parts to fit imperial measurements, and British engineers insisted on a top-mounted curved magazine to feed the rimmed .303 cartridge that dated back to the Victorian era. Even in testing, the Bren looked awkward beside the German MG-34 or the later MG-42, guns that spat twice as many rounds per minute. But reliability has a language of its own. The Bren's slow rate of fire, about 500 rounds per minute, kept barrels cooler and ammunition use disciplined. Its quick-change barrel could be swapped in seconds by the No. 2 gunner without interrupting a defensive line. Infantry platoons learned that two Bren teams, well-positioned, could lock down a field where submachine guns would have burned through magazines in moments. Obsolete quietly became indispensable. As British units rebuilt after Dunkirk, officers noticed something the figures never showed. The Bren almost never failed. Sand, mud, or snow, its wide tolerances shrugged off grime that choked the MG-34's precision parts. In the deserts of North Africa, crews joked that their Brents fired even after a day buried under dust. In Burma, rain turned rifles into rusted clubs, but the Bren kept a steady rhythm through monsoon nights. The weapon that seemed old-fashioned had accidentally achieved what every army sought: absolute dependability under chaos. By the winter of 1941, new production lines in Canada and Australia were running day and night. The same gun that once symbolized defeat now armed the Commonwealth from El Alamein to Hong Kong. And as Britain prepared for its return to Europe, one quiet truth emerged among its infantry. Whatever else failed, the Bren would not. The story of how that transformation happened begins years before the first German bomb fell on London. In the 1930s, Britain's army faced a crisis of modernization on a shoestring budget. The Great War had drained coffers and scarred minds. Few politicians wanted to fund weapons again. Yet lessons from the trenches, where the Lewis gun's open cooling shroud jammed and overheated, had not been forgotten. A search began quietly for a new light machine gun to replace it. The War Office tested designs from the United States, Switzerland, and Czechoslovakia. In the end, a small Czech factory, Zbrojovka Brno, offered a machine gun known as the ZB-26 and its improved version, the ZB-30. Compact, air-cooled, accurate, and astonishingly durable, the Brno design impressed every British inspector who touched it. Trials at Enfield in 1934 saw it survive mud baths and sand drags that crippled competitors. One officer wrote, "It does not merely fire, it endures." Britain purchased the license in 1935 and began adapting the gun to its own needs. The name Bren came from the fusion of Brno and Enfield, but that adaptation was not simple translation. It was reinvention. The British version required the gun to fire the .303 round, a cartridge with a protruding rim unsuited to box magazines. Engineers developed the distinctive banana-shaped top loader to feed it reliably, introducing a gravity-assisted design that made the Bren instantly recognizable on any battlefield. The re-engineering also improved balance and control. The Bren's bipod placement, conical flash hider, and finely machined bolt group gave it extraordinary accuracy, so much that British doctrine treated it more like a precision rifle than a bullet hose. Bren gunners were trained to fire in 3 to 5 round bursts, walking tracers to mark a target rather than saturating it. This discipline became the backbone of the British section attack, where the Bren's suppressive fire allowed riflemen to maneuver. What many outsiders called slow was in truth deliberate control. A Bren crew could switch barrels, adjust sights, and maintain a constant zone of suppression for hours, something the faster, fussier MG-34 could not guarantee without overheating. It wasn't glamorous, but soldiers cared less for glamour than survival. By 1939, with production lines humming, Britain entered the war with over 30,000 Brents ready. It would lose many of them in France, but by the time new shipments reached Egypt and Burma, the army already understood. This gun's reliability was not a statistic. It was a promise. The Bren earned its reputation not in theory but in the dust and terror of North Africa. When British and Commonwealth troops faced Rommel's Afrika Korps in 1941, their tanks were outgunned and their air cover uncertain. What steadied the line, more often than not, was the rhythmic clatter of Bren teams dug into rocky wadis. The desert tested every weapon's soul. Sandstorms, heat, and long supply lines turned precision engineering into liability. German MG-34s, with their tight tolerances, often jammed after minutes in airborne grit. The Bren, by contrast, coughed once, shrugged, and kept firing. Sergeant Fred Scales of the 2nd Battalion, Royal Warwickshire Regiment, later said, "It wasn't the prettiest thing, but it always answered back." His section carried 2 Brents across the Libyan frontier. Each gun fired thousands of rounds through battles like Sidi Rezegh and Gazala with barely a stoppage. The slower cyclic rate, often mocked by German propagandists, meant cooler barrels and steady ammunition discipline, vital when resupply convoys were being bombed daily by Stukas. Tactically, the Bren reshaped how infantry squads fought. German doctrine centered on the machine gun as the heart of the section. Britain mirrored that idea but refined it. 2 Brents per platoon allowed overlapping fields of fire, one gun suppressing while the other shifted or reloaded. The result was almost orchestral, controlled bursts, deliberate rhythm, precision arcs. Veterans recalled the sound as distinct, a measured thump-thump-thump amid the chaos of combat. Even German soldiers came to respect it. After Tobruk, captured Afrika Korps reports described the Bren as unerring in accuracy and steady under neglect. In desert warfare, where conditions destroyed delicate mechanisms, simplicity became superiority. When the Allies turned from defense to offense, at El Alamein in late 1942, the Bren provided the backbone of Montgomery's infantry assaults. In the opening bombardment, thousands of Bren gunners advanced behind creeping artillery fire, each leapfrogging team ensuring that no counterattack went unanswered. The gun's light frame allowed one man to carry it forward under fire, kneel, and resume firing in seconds. No tripod, no belts, no fuss, just reliable, mobile firepower. By the time Rommel withdrew westward, the Bren was no longer just a weapon. It was a symbol of endurance. From the dunes of El Alamein to the mountain passes of Tunisia, it followed British troops as faithfully as their rations and tea mugs. When British troops landed in Sicily and later Normandy, they carried Brents across terrain that punished even the strongest designs. Mud replaced sand, hedgerows choked visibility, and German defenders fought from stone farmhouses fortified with machine guns. The MG-42, successor to the MG-34, was now the enemy's roar, capable of firing 1,200 rounds per minute. On paper, the Bren should have been hopelessly outclassed. Yet, in the chaos of real combat, numbers on paper meant little. The MG-42's ferocity came at a cost. Its high rate of fire devoured ammunition and overheated barrels within minutes. German gunners required teams of 4 to keep it running. The Bren, half as fast but twice as steady, could be operated by 2 men for hours. In the bocage country of Normandy, that difference mattered. Each field or orchard was a fortress. Supply lines were narrow, firefights sudden. British infantry learned that precision beats volume. One short Bren burst could silence a sniper, cover a crossing, or pin an enemy squad until a tank arrived. Captain John Durnford of the 43rd Wessex Division later wrote that a single Bren gunner with nerve could hold a crossroads. His platoon used them to great effect during the breakout from Cannes, placing Brents at window corners to rake German machine gun nests with single, deliberate bursts. The controllable recoil and top-loading design let the gun remain rocksteady even when fired from the hip in house-to-house combat. By 1944, new models like the Mk3 shortened the barrel and lightened the frame for jungle and airborne operations. Paratroopers dropped into Arnhem with Brents slung across their chests. The gun's weight distributed evenly by its forward balance. Even when ammunition was scarce, Men prized the Bren above any captured German weapon, trusting it more than the MP40 or MG34. The verdict from the field was unanimous. It simply worked. The weapon also bridged generations. Soldiers who had fought in North Africa passed down their Brents to new recruits in France. The guns often etched with service numbers worn smooth by heat and oil. They had names, stories, and reputations, relics of a mechanical culture built on craftsmanship, not speed. When the Allies crossed the Rhine in 1945, Bren gunners guarded the bridges under heavy shellfire. The same gun dismissed as obsolete in 1940 now stood at Europe's doorstep, closing a circle history hadn't planned. After the war, many armies discarded their wartime weapons in favor of new automatic rifles. Britain, however, found itself reluctant to abandon the Bren. Experience had shown that the gun was not merely effective but adaptable. Its design allowed for easy recalibration to new calibers, and its rugged frame remained ideal for the post-war world's unpredictable conflicts. As the Cold War dawned, British troops still trusted the same gun that had carried them from Dunkirk to Berlin. In 1954, the Bren underwent a quiet evolution. Chambered for the new 7.62 by 51 mm NATO round, it was redesignated the L4. The change required only minimal retooling, a testament to the gun's original engineering foresight. The iconic curved magazine became straight to accommodate the rimless cartridge, and its bipod and sights were refined. Otherwise, the weapon stayed the same, firing with the same steady cadence that veterans recognized instantly. It was still reliable, still easy to strip and clean, and still accurate at ranges that surprised even its detractors. The L4 saw combat across the Empire's fading frontiers. From the jungles of Malaya to the mountains of Korea and the sands of Aden, the Bren's lineage proved its worth once more. In these harsh conditions, mud, heat, monsoon, the gun's simple mechanism again outperformed newer, more delicate designs. British officers often noted that units equipped with L4S reported fewer stoppages than those using belt-fed guns. The soldiers, too, preferred it. Many had learned on their fathers' wartime Brents and felt an inherited confidence in its familiar weight. Even as technology raced ahead with the FNMAG, the M60, and later the SA-80 light support weapon, the Bren refused to fade. Commonwealth forces, from Australia to India, kept their versions in service well into the 1980s. During the Falklands War of 1982, Argentine troops were stunned to find British paratroopers still carrying updated Brents on Mount Longdon and Goose Green. A veteran of 3 Para recalled, "In that cold, wet rock, it never missed a beat. You just couldn't kill a Bren." By the time the last British Brents were retired, the weapon had outlived nearly every machine gun of its generation. It had survived regime changes, doctrinal revolutions, and even the rise of entirely new calibers. What began as an obsolete design became the very definition of reliability, a paradox history would not soon forget. The legacy of the Bren endures not through nostalgia but through design philosophy. In an era obsessed with rate of fire and technological complexity, the Bren proved that precision, simplicity, and trust could outlast innovation for its own sake. From the muddy ditches of Flanders fields reborn in Normandy to the frozen hills of Korea, its story became a quiet argument in favor of craftsmanship over fashion. Armies that adopted it learned the same lesson Britain had discovered under fire. The best weapon isn't the newest one. It's the one that works when the world falls apart. Its craftsmanship made it more than a tool. It was a companion soldiers trusted with their lives. Every scrape on the receiver, every dented magazine, told a story written not by engineers, but by the men who carried it through terror and triumph alike. Even today, historians and collectors remark that a well-kept Bren will still fire flawlessly, 8 decades after its debut. Few weapons, military or otherwise, can claim such endurance. It was not sleek, not lightweight, not even modern by post-war standards, but it embodied something rarer: dependability under pressure, elegance in utility, and faith in simplicity. When Britain called it obsolete, it was measuring the wrong things: rate of fire, caliber, novelty. The Bren's true measure lay in what couldn't be graphed: trust. And that trust carried it through half a century of conflict, across continents and generations, outliving the empires it once served. Sometimes history's most reliable machines aren't those that change technology. They're the ones that never needed to. If you enjoyed uncovering how Britain's obsolete Bren gun became Europe's most trusted weapon, make sure to like, subscribe, and tell us, which World War II weapon do you think deserves its own story next?